get them to regulate their breathing so that they can be put in a sort of a relaxed parasympathetic state. And then in a way that fog and that stress kind of lifts. I call it the physiological calm because physiologically you're changing your state through the breath. And that helps with mood and memory and concentration. And then it becomes this positive sort of feedback loop of I can do something to change my state in a positive way that gives a sense of control, that gives a sense of calm. And so that sort of positively reinforces that kind of behavior.
Hi, I'm Carla. You're listening to Free to Be Curious. I've named this podcast after the values of freedom and curiosity. These inform and motivate the self-directed lifestyle choices that my family and I enjoy. I hope my guests inspire you as much as they inspire me. Welcome back to the Free to Be Curious podcast. We post weekly and we record our podcasts in the Riverside.fm online recording studio, and we use Buzzsprout to host our RSS feed. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Deezer, Amazon, and YouTube. Hit subscribe on our YouTube channel and click the bell icon to be notified when new episodes are released. Head on over to my website and sign up for our newsletter too, as that way you'll stay up to date with all our releases, promos, discount codes, and more. Join me on these socials, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. All of these links are in the description below and in the show notes. My guest today is Jody Walmer, a physiotherapist who for the last 15 years has practiced exclusively in the respiratory field. Jody says that she fell in love with respiratory physiotherapy during her 8-year-long role as a lead respiratory physiotherapist in the UK, where she gained extensive experience in both respiratory and critical care, and since then has dedicated her career to working with those suffering with breathing-related issues and seeing firsthand the incredible impact that breathing retraining has on people's lives. Jody is a certified buteyko practitioner with her own private respiratory Breathe Well clinic, which was the first of its kind in Johannesburg, South Africa at the time that she started it. She runs pulmonary rehabilitation programs, works with chronic respiratory disease patients, and all forms of breathing pattern disorders, and she incorporates inspiratory muscle training principles as well as heart rate variability into her practice. Jody's patients include children and teenagers with vocal cord dysfunction, sleep apnea, and ADHD. And she even recently presented at a conference for parents with children who have ADHD, and she spoke about the integral part that breathing plays in mood, memory, and concentration, as well as the management of anxiety in the patient. Her patient group also includes athletes and long COVID sufferers. Jody trains other South African physios in the art and science of respiratory physiotherapy and offers mentorship programs for physiotherapists wanting to skill up in the area of breathing and to set up an outpatient cardiorespiratory clinic. I know Jody as a really dear and close friend and someone with a holistic view of the body, the mind, and breath. So you can expect a lot of talk about all aspects of breathing, and you can expect to receive some super practical examples from what is coming up in this episode. So, Jody, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. So I thought maybe we can just start talking generally about the work. What does it entail when it comes to breathing and teaching people how best to breathe, given your experience and speciality in this type of respiratory work?
Well, breathing for me is such an interesting thing to be talking about because for many people it's such an instinctual thing. It's something that they don't think about, and it's something that we do about 23,000 times a day without actually giving it one moment's notice. But I guess breathing can be a bit like clouds. When you look at the clouds, you don't give them a moment's thought, but as soon as you sort of focus your attention up on the sky, you can kind of see the clouds taking certain forms, and suddenly it becomes quite meaningful. And it's the same thing with the breath, because the breath really is the very source of our life. It's the first thing we do and it's the last thing that we do. So it's a very profound function, and it's the only function in our body that we have involuntary and voluntary control of. We can't control our heartbeat, we can't control our digestion, but we can actually control our breathing. And that's profound because it's a very empowering tool to help us regulate ourselves, to help us process sometimes the chaos around us. And many a times people tell us when we're feeling stressed to calm down. And I think nobody in the history of the world has ever calmed down by being told to calm down. But we can definitely calm down by taking a deep breath or by focusing on our breathing. And so that's why breathing is a very empowering and profound tool for me, but also it's involved in every function of our body. So if I even told you how breathing can affect how our face is formed, suddenly people start paying a bit more attention to that. Breathing can affect how we can concentrate and how we can retain information. Breathing is involved in digestion. So if you're having any digestive challenges, often fixing the breathing can really relieve the digestive challenges. It affects how our hormones work. So it's an integral process in every function of our body, and yet we don't pay much attention to it until we can't breathe, and then nothing else matters.
That is so profound, Jody. Honestly, I haven't really considered about how little I think about breathing. But yeah, until I struggle to breathe, and then it's very obvious. So what would you say are the common errors we make when we breathe and how we can correct them, and what actually is the best way to breathe?
Okay, so that's a really great question, because if there's one piece of advice that I could give you that people could leave here with if they forget everything else, the most important thing that you can do for your breathing is to breathe with your nose. That is the most important device for breathing, actually, and I can share with you why. My son calls it the superhero of breathing, because when you breathe through your nose, automatically your breathing slows down. And did you know that when you breathe through your nose, you get 20% more oxygen distributed through the body? So that can really help with every function, especially concentration. And when you breathe through your nose, you kind of release a very special molecule called nitric oxide. And this nitric oxide helps to open your blood vessels, so improve circulation, open all your lung vessels or breathing vessels, which helps with breathing. And it's also a very natural immune boosting agent for your body. So if you just use your nose, your immune system's better, your nervous system's better, and all your body functions work better. And also, when you breathe through your mouth, you get bad breath. So it really also helps with your with social aspects.
Okay,
yes.
So I'm just going to skip ahead to something I wanted to ask later because it's relevant now. What happens when you're sick or your kid is sick and your nose is blocked? So now you're really struggling to breathe through your nose.
Yes. So there are certain unblocking nasal techniques that can work. So one of them, we can do them in a moment. But if your nose or your child's nose is blocked, one of the first things that you need to focus on is getting it unblocked. So steaming works really, really well. You want to hydrate the nasal passages to help open them up. And you can steam just with steam, or you can add a very special remedy of Olbas. It's an age-old traditional remedy that is over the counter, but it works really well as an anti-inflammatory. And also spraying and cleansing your nose with nasal washouts. And then a technique just to manipulate your sinus bones to get the lymph and the mucus flowing. So if we could do it together now.
Definitely.
So what you take is you take your thumb. I call it the thumb-tongue technique. And you can use it for, kids as old as, 18 months to 2, as long as they understand what it is that you're asking of them. Or you can also help them. So you take your thumb and you add sort of adequate pressure between your eyebrows, and you kind of just give it a circle. And then you release that pressure, and then you take your tongue and you push it on the soft palate part of your roof of your mouth, like you're clicking. So you rub, and you rub, and you can do that,
Feeling some mucus moving
5,
around,
6.
literally.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And actually, the more you breathe through your nose, the more it will open up because of that special nitric oxide molecule that I that I spoke about. And if you think about it, if you look at a newborn baby, they have to be able to breathe through their nose in order to feed. If they can't breathe through their nose, they can't feed and they can't sustain life. So nose breathing is the fundamental of good, better breathing.
So would you say a common error is not breathing through your nose? And then how to correct that is just to start breathing through your nose and keep doing it. And if you're congested from sickness or allergies or any other reason, attend to clearing out your nasal passages. And that's with this technique, the thumb and the steaming. All right.
So often in the modern world that we live in, we are sitting by computers or we're at postures, so we generally open our mouths, and then it's habitual. So when you're breaking a habit of mouth breathing, often the first important step is awareness. So knowing where it is that you're breathing. So if it fits in with what we're doing today, can we spend a moment on assessing our own breathing?
Yes, please.
And just be mindful of how we ourselves are breathing.
This mindfulness business and breath.
First, yes, and they're such great projects, because I think if you can get that started, I think you might have the rest of your life figured out.
All of it will be fine.
All of it will be fine.
So what do we want?
All of it is already fine,
That's
right?
true.
Okay, so all that we're going to begin with is just closing our eyes, just so that we can really connect with our body. And then we're going to place one hand on the top part of our chest, so our index finger is sitting just below our collarbone. And our other hand is going to be sitting just above our belly button and underneath our solar plexus, so somewhere in the middle of ourselves. And just breathe as if you feel comfortable breathing. Don't try change anything. Don't try think how you should, could, or would breathe. Just breathe as you. And just notice if you're breathing through your nose or through your mouth. Just be aware. Notice if you can actually hear yourself breathing. Notice the ratio of your inhale breath versus your exhale breath. Are they the same? Is one longer than the other? And if so, which one? And then just notice your hands. Bring your attention to your hands and the movement of your hands. Is your top hand moving? Is your bottom hand moving? And if they're both moving, give a percentage to the movement of the hands, top versus bottom. 60%, 40%, 50-50. Notice if the breathing rate is fast or slow. And here would be a good time to give yourself a minute to count your breaths. And then notice how shallow or how deep your breathing feels. Then you can open your eyes and we can sort of unpick that a bit to know what it is that you should be looking for. So Carla, what did you notice? Were you breathing with your nose or with your mouth?
Thankfully with my nose, which I'm now very conscious of since I've received this informal coaching from you from the last few years, but through my nose.
Yes. Okay, so that's really important for reasons that we've already spoken about. But often, if you notice, for example, in your kids, the best time to notice if they're a nose or mouth breather is generally when they sleep. So they should be sleeping with their mouth closed. And if you check on them and their mouth is open, there are a few ways that you can kind of facilitate a mouth close. You can look at their posture with their pillows. You can gently close their mouth by pushing on their chin. Or you can sort of introduce a very thin piece of tape. And we can talk about that later if you want, by just taping the mouth closed, because mouth breathing affects the way their brain oxygenates. It can affect how their tonsils work. So often we get the term swollen adenoids. And then often the first port of call is to remove something that isn't optimal, which isn't the first way you should ever really go without doing everything else. It affects the quality of microbiome in the mouth and therefore in the lungs. And you're not using the very apparatus that is designed for optimal breathing.
Like the intelligent apparatus that we are built with.
Yes, the inherent apparatus to enable us to function optimally being the nose. So nose breathing, and often a lot of people who have sleep disordered breathing or snoring or apnea, if we can just correct how they breathe by using their nose, that can often fix a lot of the problem. So I'm really pleased to see that you're breathing through your nose.
I've been practicing, with all the informal coaching I've received from you over the years in breath. I've been practicing, but I do notice other things that my chest doesn't move so much, more like the diaphragm, but shallow. My breath is shallow, longer in than out, and we've spoken about that before. Like a common mistake is actually breathing too much, that's serious because you want to breathe the right amount. So can you explain that sort of common pitfall?
So the in versus the out breath. So we are designed to breathe out for almost twice as long as we breathe in. And that really, again, is just to regulate our nervous system. So often many of us are breathing in for longer than they're breathing out. So that means that we trap some air in the lungs and it makes it more difficult for us to breathe, and then we get short of breath a lot quicker, or we feel like we're a lot more anxious all of the time because by breathing that way, we've actually put our nervous system in sort of a stress response or a sympathetic nervous system state, as opposed to a relaxed response or a parasympathetic state. So if I could use the example of something that you're scared of. So if, for example, you're sort of lying on your bed and a big fat spider lands on your face, automatically you're going to, or for me, that's like what nightmares are made of. You're going to take a sharp inhale. The inhale breath is really the stimulating sympathetic breath. But when you think about a puppy or falling in love, what it is that you do, you exhale. So the exhale breath is very much associated with a relaxed state. So if we can get our breathing out for longer than we're breathing in, we can really regulate our nervous system. And that's important, let's say, for example, in kids who are maybe have impulse control challenges, or are dysregulated, or are feeling really stressed in an environment, and parents are telling them to calm down. It's very difficult for the kid to calm down. So often just teaching them, when in doubt, breathe out, lengthening that out breath, that can often regulate not only children, but yourself as well in moments of stress. Like we're living in a world where there's a fair amount of chaos that we have to navigate. So our breath is a very powerful tool to keep us as the calm in the storm. So just allowing our breath out to breathe, to govern what controls our breathing. So our breath out should always be longer. So tell me, which hand did you feel move more when you were breathing?
The bottom hand, the one on the diaphragm area was moving more.
Yes. So let's just familiarize people with the diaphragm. If you take your fingers and make sort of like a scrunched up, exactly, and you place it in your solar plexus.
Which are where?
And you have
ribs, at the bottom of your ribs.
Just underneath your ribs. At the bottom of your ribs in the middle.
Okay.
Exactly right. And you have a cough. Did you feel that little sort of
pressure.
muscle jump out at you?
What a powerful muscle. Is that the diaphragm? I've never knew that.
That's the diaphragm.
In this area, but I've never felt it work. It's very strong.
Yes, and it looks like it's very strong, and it looks like this. Okay. So it's a dome-shaped muscle that sits under the ribs, and it sort of kind of divides our body, top and our bottom body. And when it moves really like in sync and properly, it moves like this, so it helps digestion, circulation, co-regulation of your breathing, your nervous system. So again, breathing with your nose and your diaphragm.
And when in doubt,
out longer than
breathe out. I'm sorry I interrupted you. I was trying to remember the things. When in doubt, breathe out.
Yes, so breathe out. Yes, and breathe out for longer than the breath in. Okay. And there's always a little pause between the out breath and the in breath. Now, when people say take a deep breath, one mustn't get confused between a deep breath and a big breath. So take a deep breath as you would think a deep breath would be. Yeah, so what you might have noticed is this happening. Okay, yeah, so that's more of a big breath. So when we take a big breath, we're kind of using the muscles that are not really designed for breathing unless under extreme stress. And we completely neglect the diaphragm, which is the muscle for breathing. So a deep breath is with the nose and the diaphragm. So place your hand back again on your solar plexus and take a slow breath in. And you'll notice your tummy expands out on the in-breath and the belly button comes back in on the out breath.
Right, so knowing the difference between a big breath and a deep breath is important.
And a deep breath.
One other thing I wanted to go back to just about was the common pitfalls is like, you mentioned the disadvantages of mouth breathing and you mentioned the microbiome in the mouth. It's also related to cavities, is that right? So a mouth breather will have a much higher chance of having cavities in their teeth because of that, like sort of upsetting the balance in the mouth.
It certainly is a contributing factor. And another thing is, especially again, if we can correct our habits, because practice makes permanence, right? If we can correct our habits when we're small, when we're kids, then that's setting us up for a really promising breathing future, as it were. So if we're not breathing through our nose as children, that affects the tongue position on the palate, and then that affects how our teeth and our mouth develop. And that can often mean crooked teeth if we're not breathing correctly. It can often mean sort of like a jawline that is sort of set back as opposed to forward. And it also affects the narrowing arch of our palate, which then in turn affects how our pineal and all our glands in our brain function. So, and Dr. Mew is a great person to look at with regards to all the work he's done with mouth development and breathing. But if we can correct it in children, you'll find that even their orthodontics can really be profoundly affected by the way that you breathe.
Right, Jody, is Dr. Mews famous for saying he can correct sort of skew teeth without braces simply by breathing properly, which repositions your tongue and your teeth like follow suit? Is that one of the things he's famous for?
That is right. And Dr. Stephen Lin is also a really good resource to look up with regards to how breathing can profoundly affect your structure, your bone structure, your teeth structure.
So on the topic of the palate development, I know in terms of your holistic view of nutrition and the body, you also have some other important information for parents about how to look after their nutrition and their kids' nutrition to have a palate that actually facilitates breathing and straight teeth. Is that something that would fit into this area of knowledge?
Certainly. So, where do we get our life force from? It's the air that we breathe and how we breathe. It's where we get our food from and what we eat. It's where we get our water from and how much we drink. And it's certainly the quality of our sleep. And that in turn, each of them are sort of, interrelated. You can eat great, but if you don't breathe well, you're not in optimal state of well-being. You can breathe well and sleep great, but if you don't eat well, you're not in an optimal state of wellness. So all of these avenues are important to explore. And one of the influencing factors in mine and my family's life is the Weston A. Price Foundation. And those are the nutritional values and principles that we follow and integrate in our family.
And those principles are the ones that will be holistic in giving you like the bigger picture of your health to facilitate breathing and nutrition and the water that you drink. So I'm going to put that in our resources.
And you did a great podcast on hydration and water. So
yeah, you inspired me for that one, Jody, because we were like on a water drinking path last year. We were like, great, this is the year we're gonna rock this hydration thing.
This is it.
And we were trying to find the biggest glasses that we could drink our water out of when we were together.
Correct. Yeah. Here we are.
I've started lying to myself, by the way, about my water. I started telling myself this is 500 mils. And I drink the whole thing, and I think I've done my 500 mils, but it's actually 750 mils. You wouldn't believe it in this glass. So it's one of my new hacks to add to the water hacks.
So I just want to, just for everybody to understand what it is that they need to be aware of. So we know that it must be nose and diaphragm. Okay. And could you hear yourself breathe?
Not much. It was quite quiet.
Okay, good. So some people can actually hear themselves breathing, and that's also an indicator that you're either breathing too much or too heavy. So just like you can eat too much, you can actually breathe too much. And then that throws out the balance of your oxygen that you're breathing in and the carbon dioxide that you're breathing out. And that can have a physiologically profound effect on how you function. So you want to make sure that you sort of a quiet breather. So you can always just put your finger, and kids can do this for them to understand that if you put your finger under your nose, just to feel your breath very gently, a warm sort of like feather-like tickle on the finger, that's kind of the lightness in which you should be breathing. As a mom, I'm very very passionate about raising my children to be very aware of what they eat, how they breathe, and what they drink. So I just say to Jacob, can you just, who's my 7-year-old son, pop your finger under your nose? Are you breathing like a dinosaur, or are you breathing like a little mouse? And it's kind of like mouse breathing is what you really want to be aiming for.
It's so amazing for kids.
So you don't want to be able to, you don't want to be able to hear yourself breathing. And then the fast or slow breath, you should be breathing at about, as an adult, between 10 to 12 breaths per minute. Kids are different because they haven't fully sort of finished developing their bone structure of their ribs and their muscles and their lungs. But it shouldn't be fast, and it shouldn't be through the mouth. So if you want to help children slow their breathing down, or if you want to try get them to focus on their inhale, you can make it fun by getting them to blow bubbles, or getting them to blow a whistle, or even simply tracing their hand. So as they breathe in and as they breathe out, and they breathe in and they breathe out, and breathe in and breathe out. So they're kind of connecting with their body, with their breath as well, and regulating their breathing and slowing their breathing down. So you want your breathing to be, and this is at rest, obviously when you're exercising it's different, but you always want to be breathing with the nose, diaphragm soft and slow. That's the way to go.
And breathe and learn how to breathe out, actually. I'm sure kids naturally do that, and then we kind of get out of it through like the modernity that we live in and grow up in. I mean, I'm definitely like one of those breathe too much, quickly in people. I'm trying to work on the exhale. When in doubt, breathe out. I've got like you in my head.
Yes.
When in doubt, breathe out.
Yes. But this is a powerful tool.
Yes. It's
right.
That's magic
straw.
one. You've got a bag of
this
tricks
magic
there.
one. Yes. Yes, my very expensive piece of equipment in the form of a straw. Yes. But this is for adults and kids, because when you breathe in and when you breathe out through the straw, you're naturally slowing your breathing down and allowing your lungs to empty. And I saw a great, there's a lady who works a lot with kids and breathing that I follow on Instagram. Her name will come to me in a moment, but she has this little straw device that she's made into a necklace. So you can just kind of have access to this little straw that's hanging around your neck, which I think would be a very useful
Yeah, that's such
resource.
a great tool for kids. If they're in a moment of doubt, get your tool and breathe out. I remember when you first showed me the straw breathing, you said to me it's the diameter of the straw, which is the hack, not the length. So you can make a short version for yourself or your kid, as long as you are breathing through the small hole, and it kind of makes breathing out. Sorry, it makes because you're breathing through your nose, and then you're breathing out through the straw. It makes that out breath really long because it's such a small space to push through. So I remember that, and you said to me, you can just do it while you're doing other stuff because you're building a habit. So I would, like, while I'm driving, do it, or cooking or whatever, to practice breathing out.
Yeah.
Like you say, it's training.
And if you don't have a straw,
exactly.
And if you don't have a straw, you can just purse your lips, like you're blowing out, like you blowing on a hot spoon of soup. So it must be gentle, not where you blow the soup
or into your face,
or you exactly, or you're blowing out a candle, but you're not extinguishing it. That's sort of like a gentle exhale.
I love these visualizations. I mean, especially the dinosaur and the mouse for kids, and also for kids to imagine blowing out a birthday candle, but like not all the way. Getting the flame to like
letting
move,
the candles to dance.
Get them to dance.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. I love that, Jodie. Yeah. I'm gonna use that with my kids, that imagery. Okay.
I hope so.
Okay, so on the practical skills topic, you're trained in the buteyko technique of breathing. Have I said it correctly?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So what's that about? And how can the average person get a resource to do with buteyko?
Okay, so buteyko is one of the techniques that I use within my practice, and I use a lot of the recommendations that come with buteyko, in daily application with breathing. So it was a technique that was designed by a Russian doctor, Dr. Konstantin Buteyko, in I think the 1950s, where he noticed that a lot of the body's challenges or health problems or imbalances came from poor breathing. And he associated as the fundamental that there was an oxygen and carbon dioxide imbalance. So you were breathing out too much, losing a lot of carbon dioxide, and that would affect the biochemistry and the physiological functioning of the body on every level, to put it simply. But a lot of things have progressed in terms of research to show that that's just one aspect of how disordered or dysfunctional incorrect breathing affects the body's ability to function optimally. So he talks a lot about reducing your breathing and breathing less. Less is more. Just like you can eat too much, you can breathe too much. That philosophy, and also really working with breathing through the nose as the key point. So you can get the Buteyko app, which is free and gives you a lot of interesting breathing hacks and how to control your breathing using some of the Buteyko methods. And it was originally specifically designed for kids and adults who were suffering a lot with asthma and not able to control their breathing, and their breathing being triggered by everything, environment, food, everything. And that in turn is what asthma is. It's sort of a hyperreactivity of the airway. So Buteyko was originally an application for those that suffer with asthma, but it's since been a useful tool that I've used in my practice for anybody, lung disease, no lung disease, anybody, to optimize their breathing. Because if you don't optimize your breathing, no other normal function can occur in an optimal way.
Right, that's what you were saying when you were introducing kind of what the work is when you're dealing with breath. It's so fundamental. We spend so little time thinking about it and we're so unaware of it, but it's just basically so fundamental to every function of our bodies. Yeah, I think that's a key takeaway.
And it's the one thing that we can control.
Right, you said you can, and you could something that is happening without you thinking about it, and then you can focus your attention on it and mold it in the direction of wellness. Okay, so that is really amazing, Jody. Okay, so that's the Buteyko breathing techniques, and you say they can be used for anyone, whether they have a condition or a disease or anything, and kids. Okay, so I actually struggled with asthma when I was a kid, and I managed to kind of overcome it by changing my diet and lifestyle. But occasionally I do have, as you know, because I always tell you when I'm having one of these like episodes of like, I'm now struggling to breathe. So I'm still like a work in progress. But
we all are.
You did also tell me about box breathing when we had like one of our little sort of coaching sessions. Is that what Buteyko talks about, or is it something different?
Buteyko doesn't speak about box breathing in that definition. But, when we look at how we are changing the way that we breathe, we're essentially changing a habit. Or if we're changing our state, we need to kind of take our body outside of what it's doing and apply our body in a different way in order for change to occur. So we have to put our body in a slight state of discomfort in order to facilitate change. So box breathing is one of the ways to do that, but it's in a very relaxed way. So box breathing, if you think about the box, you breathe in, you hold, you breathe out, and you hold. And it depends how much time you want to allocate to each side of the box. So usually what I do is I do the 4-2-6-2 breathing. So you breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 2, breathe out for 6, and hold for 2. So 4-2-6-2. And that really creates like a 12-second breath, essentially. So we're really slowing our breathing down to almost sort of 6 breaths per minute, which is really slow. So we're really accessing that parasympathetic, relaxed body response. So it's not something that you should be breathing like all the time. But if you want to access that part of the body where you can relax. And what's important when we're thinking about healing, whether it be from a disease, whether it be from a detox response, or healing is not something that we can rush, but it's something that we can support. And one of the ways that we can do that is through the breath. And we cannot heal if our body is in a stress response. So just by implementing a relaxed breathing 10 minutes a day, we can put our body in a state of repair, regeneration, and healing.
Wow, so this actually reminds me so much of my episode with Leo, who is your husband, and Leo Lazinski. And in it, he mentioned that, he works with trauma release and there's techniques to get healing from trauma. And he mentioned that the breath is one of those that you can use in the moment to regulate. And but it's so amazing that you can, if you make it a habit, you can set your body up for healing, because we also discussed how your body's got all the tools it needs to heal, given the space to do it. So as a practice to do, so you say like 10 minutes of box breathing at some point in the day is like...
Or 10 minutes of mindfulness with regards to your breathing, however that may look like to you. So some people find the structure of box breathing, overthinkers specifically, then they focus too much on getting the 4-2-6-2 right, and then you lose the essence of what you're trying to achieve. Other people need that kind of guidance. So again, it's really very individual. But the idea is to put yourself in a space where it's quiet, and you're in, I call it the lying on the beach position, where you're lying on your back with your knees bent or straight, up to you, and your hands behind your head. So you're lying on the beach. And this position really facilitates a relaxation response, but also it stops the muscles that are not designed for breathing, these muscles, to be working, and really focuses on the ribs and the diaphragm, because the breathing is really a 360 experience, not just your diaphragm, just the way your body works. And when you put your body in that kind of sort of position in a relaxation response, then you can focus, even if it's just a simple nose, diaphragm, soft and slow mindful breathing. Or you could have some music in the background, or you could do the box breathing.
So the idea with the box breathing is to make sure you're slowing your breath. It's not like we need to obsess about like a box shape and worry about 4-2-6-2. The idea is the in is less than the out, and you've got pauses. And that's it. And if people wanted more on that, they could actually come and see a breathing coach like you, breathing expert, breathing physio, to expand on that and not obsess about like the box.
And understanding their body in relation to their breath.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. We're just quite disconnected from our bodies and our breath and in the modern world that we live in. But what I've just recently accepted is that I'm in this world. I was just always wanting to be in the other world, the other world where breathing is easy. Yeah. And then I'm like, but I want to be in that other world. And just recently I'm like, I'm in this world. This is my world. So now I need skills to survive this world. And knowing how to breathe is one of those skills. And then, Jody, you mentioned you're a parent. I mean, that's actually how we met. We both attended the most unique and special parent-child sessions at the Waldorf School. So we both are parents of young kids. And you've given us some advice so far for how to prepare our kids to breathe and learning to do so when they're young. And you've spoken about the health benefits and the disadvantages. But is there anything else you want to add specifically with children on helping them breathe right? And how do you explain to a child breathe out more, and make it relatable?
The first thing I would say is be the example.
Okay, right.
Sure. So the best way to regulate your child's
modeling business.
Well, yes, that's the great and terrifying journey and responsibility of parents.
I have to breathe
parenthood, right?
Really?
Yeah. Imagine. Yes. So that would be my number one: is be the example, and even in the moment. If your child is having a challenge in the moment, and often that simple when in doubt, breathe out. So you can get them, you can actually be the candle for them. Say, here's a candle, let's blow the flame. Or you can actually get them to give themselves a hug and a squeeze on the inhale and a relax on the exhale. So and you're co-regulating with them in a way through your breath. So if your breath is erratic, they cannot be in sync with you. So again, just be that example and then provide them the space to connect with themselves. So often allowing that touch, or you being the candle, or you having a straw. I mean, mom's bags have everything except the kitchen sink in there, so why not add a straw? And you can also make it fun by getting them to blow bubbles with a straw, or actual bubbles, or a whistle, or one of those windmill things. And you make it relatable by teaching them. Maybe you can use a third party, as in a bear, or you can get them with my daughter who's 18 months. I get her to sit on my tummy and I say, watch what happens when I breathe in, and watch what happens when I breathe out. And then I put our little puppy on her tummy and I get her to do the same kind of thing. So she sees it, she feels it, and she sort of integrates it, and it's an experiential thing. So telling something as opposed to experiencing something are two different things. So as long as they're experiencing it through watching you, through feeling it within themselves. And bedtime is a great time to do it because you're relaxed and, hopefully it's a very calm setting. Yes.
The dream.
Or even in the bath, you can get them blowing bubbles in the bath, making bubble bath and making them create bubbles and see how powerful they can be just with their breathing.
I love that, Jody.
Blowing balloons. And then that way you can access your joy through fun and breathing with them. So it's sort of like a joint experience. Did I answer that question?
Yes, so well that I'm just thinking how often I just tell my son, breathe out, take a breath. Let's take a big breath. Let's take a deep breath. Let's all breathe. And I'm just saying it. I'm really not modeling it because in that moment, I myself am obviously having a struggle with a situation. And I think also that co-regulation thing is totally underrated. Our kids are so connected to our own nervous systems, our vibrations, our feelings. And I often look at it critically, like for the worse, but also for the good, because we can regulate our own breath. Start by breathing in a tense situation yourself. I'm going to remember that one. And actually, sometimes I have said, like, listen, I just need to go take a few breaths. I don't know if I actually do, but I'll. Now, modeling it is so key. I really love that. It's actually very empowering. It's very empowering.
Yes.
That,
and it's also great for them to see your struggle. Like, okay, I just need to take some breaths, and then you do, and then they see that sort of like release.
I've calmed down.
And they say, okay,
things have changed. The state has changed because of that. Okay, no, that's amazing. I love the straw in the bath. We're going to adopt that. That's why I've noticed you always have a lot of balloons around your house.
I do.
Kids always blowing balloons when we're at you.
Yes, they are. So they are. Yeah. And I even get them to be breathing balloons through their nose.
Oh,
and would you believe
what? No,
it?
I would not
it's
believe
not something
it.
I suggest everybody to try at home. But yes, because we really want to strengthen the nose. And if we go back to the nose, if you want to calm your breathing down in the moment, you can even just do alternate nose breathing. It's been a yogi practice for many, many years, where you breathe in through the one nostril, out through the other, and then in through the same one. Yeah. So I generally just get them to put their thumb as opposed to squeezing their nostrils.
Just put your thumb. And what is it? It's in through the one, and then out through that one, or out through the other one?
Out through the other.
So in one.
So in, swap, out, and in through that same one, swap, and out. And you'll notice how it automatically slows your breathing down, and it incorporates the diaphragm. It sort of brings you to your center.
This is actual general education for our kids, general well-being. It's so fundamental.
And for ourselves.
To have a set of tools that we can turn to in moments of stress. And then, Jody, what about particularly like kids who suffer from something maybe more than just a tense moment, but kids who are suffering and have been diagnosed with something called ADHD? What kind of work do you do in that space for those parents and kids and anxiety associated with those things?
So often we see in children who struggle with that challenge is profound dysregulation and inability to sort of center and ground themselves, not only in a situation where there's chaos, but to concentrate and to be present in that moment. So the same principles apply for that, is get them to regulate their breathing so that they can be put in a sort of a relaxed parasympathetic state. And then in a way that fog and that stress kind of lifts. I call it the physiological calm, because physiologically you're changing your state through the breath, and that helps with mood and memory and concentration. And then it becomes this positive sort of feedback loop of I can do something to change my state in a positive way that gives a sense of control, that gives a sense of calm. And so that sort of positively reinforces that kind of behavior. And the best thing to do is not only for the parents, but also for the teachers to understand that. So whoever the child is working with and around should be in an environment that understands the profound impact of how changing a child's state with the breath is an important part of their day. So education, not only the parents, but the caregivers, whether it be a nanny, a teacher, a grandparent, anybody who's directly involved in the privilege of raising a child, should be taught and educated with these techniques.
Right, and it is such a privilege. I like what you say about the teachers being empowered, but I also love what you're saying about the kid themselves being feeling like they are not having to rely on something external, like something someone's telling them or something they must do that's being told to them from the outside, and that they, as a kid suffering with something called ADHD, can actually concentrate by working on their breath. And that's the biggest thing, is that the kids are like maybe not concentrating, having struggles with their mood and their memory, and they have the tool within them.
And are disconnected. Yes.
Disconnected, right. And the more you add more disconnect to that by introducing like external things to fix, as opposed to going to the internal. Jody, what do we need more of to look after our health and wellness living in the city? And often people saying they're struggling with congestion, stuffy noses, coughing, asthma, getting sick. These are just like such common things we're all experiencing every day. And I mean, a lot of it has to do with where we're living. But if we are living here, which I've now accepted, what can we do to support ourselves for our best health?
So what we need more of is awareness and education in terms of how to facilitate our well-being. And unfortunately, that doesn't equal convenience. So as a parent, or even as a person living, as you say, in the world that we do, we have to give up the idea of convenience and realize that it's going to take a lot more commitment to doing the do's in order to establish the reward of optimal well-being. So that means a lot of protecting our space. So creating a calm environment where we're not bombarded with EMFs all the time, where we're drinking water that is energized and structured, to be paying very full attention to what we're putting into our bodies nutrition-wise, and ensuring that we're getting good quality sleep in order for us to regenerate and rejuvenate and to repair the damage that our toxic planet is very generously providing us. And also breathing, making sure that we breathe through our nose to kind of filter and prepare the air for our lungs, because Joburg is one of the cities that are on the list of the top 5 of the worst quality in the world, believe it or not. So we need to take those extra measures. So people often ask me about humidifiers. So using a humidifier, you get a very, very simple and cheap humidifier reading that also measures the temperature. And we should be really creating an environment where the humidity is between 35 and 45% in our home. So that will determine whether you use the humidifier or not. So providing a quality of air in our home, so looking up certain plants that would be useful to provide us of clean, good quality air to have in our garden, in our home, and making sure that we're getting some barefoot grounding walks on the green grass and sunshine on our face and in our eyes. So it's not just one thing. People often want to know that one thing. That one thing is being aware and giving up convenience and commitment to educating yourself how you can do that for your family, because we get one life, we get one chance, and it's really worth it to make it count.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I think it is true. We have so many conveniences in our modern lives and so much instant gratification that it's quite a paradigm shift and a shock to the system to now have to think I need to make extra effort to ensure my air is of a decent quality and the food I'm eating is of a decent quality and I'm breathing well and I'm conscious of all those things. Because
and it's a process.
Yes, yeah, it is a process. Once you've...
And it's not something that you have to do overnight, and it's not something that you have to do alone either.
Right.
So it's about finding the right people to be part of your community that you can have that exchange with. So I know if I take our friendship, for example, like you've been so instrumental in so many things. We've exchanged our gifts and our skills for the betterment of each other and our lives. And that is also the key, is creating community so that you can have that kind of exchange.
Yes, it is. It's literally like an intention for my year, my life, is to have that collaboration and exchange of energy and connection. And
takes a village, right?
Well,
not just to raise a child, but to raise an adult, or
raise the family and the parent. Yeah. And it actually does take a village. And we have these conveniences, and then that means we also need to put in the work. You mentioned a humidity measurer. So is that like a small device you put in your room that will tell you whether you're in the Sahara Desert or like the tropical Amazon, and you kind of want to be, like you said, 30 to 45%. Was
35 to 45,
to 45% humidity in your room. Now, say you're not. Like when you told me about this, and we got these one of this humidity reader, we were basically like we were sleeping in the Sahara.
Okay, so does that mean you were sleeping in the
driest desert? And we all couldn't sleep. We were all stuffy nosed. We all we were all dried out to the point. Like, yes, you want to be. It's interesting because your nasal passages need to be moist, but not full of mucus. So there's a balance there. So what would you say? Like if you find yourself in this dry room that you're sleeping in, what can you do? You put a humidifier on, and is that any humidifier? Tell us.
So there are a few things you can do. Number one is hydrate. So you've got to drink internally. So hydrate all the mucous membranes, which are not just in your nose and in your lungs and in your airways, but also in your tummy and digestion. And, we're all mucous membranes, really. So the first thing you can do is actually hydrate and drink that big glass of water. Cheers to you. The second thing you can do is you can do steaming if you don't have access to a humidifier. You can do some steaming 10 minutes a day, in through the nose, out through the mouth, in through the mouth, out through the mouth. That's the only time I'll ever say use your mouth for breathing. And then you can get any humidifier. What I find useful is one that actually you can preset a humidity to get the but if you've got a humidity reader, and honestly, they're like $99. They're not, not a huge investment. You can use any humidifier that allows it. And the questions I often get, warm or cold. Well, there are benefits to both. Because warm humidity is always nicer. But again, it sort of can be a breeding ground for some bacteria. But if you keep it clean, it's not an issue. Cold humidity, it depends on how your airways react. So don't get too complicated about it. Even though I say you've got to give up convenience, you don't have to complicate your life either.
Yes.
So sort of hydrating, steaming, having a humidifier in the room where you spend most of your time, and that's usually sleeping.
Okay, that is true.
And breathing through the nose. The nose humidifies and moistens the air. It prepares it for the lungs.
I mean, it's like your inbuilt filter to filter out stuff that you don't want to go into your body. It's like your inbuilt, it's your tool. So, use it for what its purpose is. Use your nose.
Use it.
Such a simple thing. Okay, so we've spoken a lot about your work with patients, but also you have another side to your professional work, which is the more academic one in training and mentoring other professionals. And what does that space look like for you?
I think for me, anybody, and it's not only mentoring professionals. I've sort of recently, as becoming a mom, I've moved into that space where mentoring moms has become a huge passion of mine as well. Like I mentioned to you, it takes a village. But what that looks like for me is any physiotherapist who is wanting to, because breathing has been so much in the spotlight of recent years for obvious reasons, a lot of professionals are wanting to help support their patients better in that space. So I offer mentorship programs which allow for professionals to feel more empowered in that space and to improve their skill set and to upskill in that space. But also for moms who want to provide an opportunity for their children to breathe better, function better, access optimal health, because that's one of our basic rights being in this planet, right? So I offer that mentoring space to anybody who's looking to improve or upskill in that area of life,
Right, which I think, most of the people that I come across are really looking for skills to help their families in that way. And to have like an expert on their team, someone in their circle of trust, can really change everything. So looking to the future, is that a space you find yourself moving more towards as a breathing expert, or what else is in the future for you?
I would, in the future for me, so I was actually discussing this with Leo, my husband, last night about, we always need to, what's that saying? You have to wake up with something to do, somebody to love, and something to look forward to, right? So if we can have all of those things, we are truly blessed. So we're looking at what to look forward to. So it's such a good question you're asking me now. I would love to have or create or expand my space for moms and for teachers and for caregivers in whatever capacity, to have workshops, to facilitate a space in which taking this commitment to health to another level for people, whatever that may look like for them. So whether it's through breathing, whether it's through nutrition, whether it's through looking at ways to improve their home setup to encourage health, that would be where I would want to, and working with Leo sort of as a joint, working as a family to empower other families and to expand the village and the community and conscious living, really, in this world of chaos is where I would want to shift.
See you there. And I actually remember a few years ago just like seeing you as that person who would hold the space for other moms to learn these skills. So, and amazing to also be able to work as a family, right? To present as a family unit to other families so that we know no one's in isolation. And we do operate as a family. There's the family vibration and there's the family feeling. That is something to be aware of. So, Jodie, I look forward to that.
Good.
I would love, obviously, to be part of that movement. And I think it is.
And you already are.
I'm happy I am. But you guys have a lot of great practical skills and tips to offer other families. And as modeling that in literally the way you are living is an inspiration for other people to do the same. So I think that's a beautiful thing to look forward to for the future.
Thank you.
If people want to contact you and find you for this sort of thing and anything else that you specialize in, whether it be the ADHD stuff, the anxiety, as a physiotherapist looking for training or mentoring, where would they find you?
Well, I think you could probably include my contact details in your resource.
Okay, I'll do that.
Section, and they can contact me directly on my cell phone number or on my email. I'm a belly-to-belly kind of girl. Yes. I like face-to-face. Yes. As much as we are living in a social media world, that's not sort of a space where I function optimally. So it's direct contact the best way.
That's how you build the relationship and the connection when it comes to these sorts of practical skills. And the virtual has its space, but
for sure,
looking for you,
sure.
I'm
like
sure.
This.
Yes.
Like this.
But I think if people are looking for you, they're going to be looking for that intimate connection. So thank you. We'll put your number in our show notes. And then lastly, I just wanted to end off by asking you about some pieces of advice that you have. You've already given us a lot, but maybe if you could sum up the one piece of advice that you would give, that you've received, that changed things for you, and that you would give other people, and then also what you would tell your 20-year-old self if you could.
I'll start off with your last question. Yes. Is what I would tell my 20-year-old self is I would tell her to invest in herself more. And what would that look like? Invest in my health, my mental well-being, and to protect my space in such that do the things that bring joy and offer things of value to others that can do the same. So that would be the advice that I give my 20-year-old self. And to really take that seriously, to really commit to taking care of myself.
It's such a good one in terms of self-worth, to invest in yourself. It means that you love yourself. You believe in yourself, which is a foreign concept in the model.
It is a foreign
for
concept,
most of us.
But it's such a practical concept because it's the things that we do on a daily basis that sort of give us the end result. It's not one massive action. It's the small little actions that can create that. And I remember reading a book called The Atomic Effect, I think, or Atomic Habits. I'll double check that, but it talks about how just 1 degree change in a flight path can make the difference between landing up in Washington and landing up in Florida, and that we can apply to our daily life. So I would tell my 20-year-old self, invest in yourself, even if it's 1 degree a day or 1% a day.
Interesting.
So that would be that. And then what piece of advice did somebody give me that, well, my father, who I hold in the highest regard, who's been a huge mentor in my life, he would often say to me that if you were to put your problems, everybody were to put their problems in a bucket, you would still pull your own ones out at the end of the day. So just as you're grateful for the joys, your own joys in your life, be grateful for your pains, because you wouldn't choose anybody else's.
Yeah.
So that kind of puts things into perspective when not comparing your life to others or not wanting your problems and rather being somebody. Just, it's okay. Be grateful for. My son was singing, be grateful for the sunshine, be grateful for the rain, be grateful for your joy, and be grateful for your pain. So my dad and my son are huge mentors in my life. And the other thing, a piece of advice I would leave you with is, and I'm going to relate it to breathing, is when in doubt, breathe out. Nothing else matters if you're not in a space where you can be calm in our storm that we're in now. So when in doubt, breathe out.
Right. You can't heal if you're not in a space of calmness in the body. You can't problem solve. So
you can't connect.
You can't. And on the opposite side is that you can do
and you can't
all
offer
of it.
value.
Right, that's true. And the opposite is that you can do all of that simply by regulating your system, and you can do that using your breath. So it's like it's a magic tool that we all have inside of us. So yeah, thanks, Jody. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
For your holistic
It's been a pleasure.
The advice and sharing the practical side of this as well. I mean, I just love it that even though we're virtual and everything, we managed to have like something concrete to talk about when it comes to breathing, physical stuff, being in touch with the body. So thank you. I loved it. I'm going to go
thank you,
work on
and
my breath.
I'm glad. Yes, and I'm glad it met your intention of today, and just to say thank you for creating a platform in which these messages can be shared to people who are looking to give up convenience and to commit to their well-being.
Honestly,
and creating a village.
It is
So
my
thank
biggest
you.
pleasure. Literally, it is my biggest pleasure.
Thank you for spending this time with me. I love getting to know my listeners. So please do subscribe to my YouTube channel and on your chosen podcast app. Engage with me in meaningful conversation on my comment-friendly blog, and send me an email to share your self-directed life story. My website address is thefree2BCuriouspodcast.com, and my email address is Carla@free2becurious.com. I really look forward to getting to know you.